We're live. Hi, everybody. I'm Patti Ashley, and I'm laughing because, this tech stuff just gets better and better every day. So here we are. Shameless Facebook. So
We're going to get there. We are.
I just kind of laugh.
Yes.
That's all I can do. So anyway, hi. Welcome. I'm glad you guys are here. And I have been doing this series, Shameless Facebook Fridays. This will be my fourth one, even though the last one with Katie a couple weeks ago didn't work because of tech problems. So Stacie, my guest today, Stacie Lovato, is hopefully we're going to be okay and it's all going to work. And if not, we're just going to be shameless about it and let it go, let it be.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm happy to introduce my guest today, Stacie Lovato. She's a conscious parenting coach. I've known her for a while. I've watched her raise her children and her, incredible journey on this ride of parenting and, the shadow of the two good mothers. She actually helped me when I was launching my book and my workshops. So very excited. Yeah. I'm very excited to have you here today. Hi, Stacie.
Hi.
Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Patti. Yeah. And I'm hoping some people are tuning in. So we'll ask if you just give us a little hi to let us know that you're tuning in and make sure that our technology is working somewhat. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a little sound staticky thing I'm hearing on my end. So if anybody else is hearing it, let us know. I mean, it's not a deal breaker for the broadcast, but it just isn't, it's not ideal what we're hearing. So hopefully you're not hearing it. So yeah, say hello. Let us know you're here. Stacie, tell us a little bit about your evolution of parenting and working as a conscious parent coach.
I will, yeah. So, I came across Patti years ago, and she really started me on the journey of becoming what I call an authentic mom, because I was really struggling after I had my 3 kids. I just really didn't know who I was, even though I dreamed all these years of being a mom. And I just got difficult. So Patti helped me. We worked a lot. We broke down her book. We met once a month and talked about it. And that was really, really a start for me to start looking inside and asking myself, who do I want to be as a mom and who do I want to show up as? So that started my journey. I just posted today a list of all the books that I've used on my journey. And so this started me, many of them. Then I heard Dr. Shefali talk on an Oprah. I remember I was taking a walk and she merges the Western psychology and Eastern philosophy. And when I heard her, I knew I needed to hear more. So I just started following her, joining her groups. Then she offered this Conscious Coaching Institute to become a coach of her way of thinking, of the way she teaches parents to be conscious. So I said I had to do it. I joined her second cohort. So I finished that in January, flew to New York and got to do a graduation and met so many wonderful women who were like-minded. And we stay in contact. I just finished a group for moms with one of the other coaches they sent their kids off to college in this strange time. So we had a group where we got together and talked about that. So my goal, I started Mindful Mama Warriors a couple of years ago. And my first event was an expo where I invited moms to come, and Patti was my guest speaker. And I remember when I got the email that you said you would come, I was just like, you were my first mama teacher. And I was like, she's coming to my event. And that kind of just started me. I just want to be of service to moms. I just want to help moms find their authentic path.
Yeah.
And whatever that is, being vulnerable. I recommend a lot of books and videos because I think you just never know when that thing is just going to settle in with you. It may not be the right thing for you, but it may be just so we can come together as a community and start, supporting one another.
Well, I love what you're doing because it, as you know, it's very near and dear to my heart. It's been something that, my aha a long time ago raising my children was, we're the children are our greatest natural resource, and parenting is the hardest job in the world and also the least really respected and supported. we give lip service to, aren't mothers great? Aren't your little children wonderful? But the reality of parenting, especially today in the pandemic, that's why my daughter and I are doing Moms in Real Life, like real life. This is real. And Shefali talks about conscious parenting and how we have to parent ourselves. And that's so much what, I talk about too, because we want to project onto our kiddos what, our unmet needs, and we want to be sure to protect them. And we're really seeing in the pandemic right now, I was talking with my daughter on a podcast yesterday about that. Like this experience of this pandemic is we can't protect our children from struggle anymore. We can't, lawnmower parent it, like smooth it out. This is, and Elizabeth quoted Glennon Doyle, and she said, you can do hard things, And so I think the biggest lesson right now is helping our kids understand that, we can get through hard things instead of trying to not have hard things. So the conscious parenting work that Shefali does is really about our own inner work around how we tolerate that, which brings us into the shame piece.
Yes.
And you and I were talking before about how my book, Living in the Shadow of the Too Good Mother Archetype, that really is about shame, because that's what we're looking at, the shadow material, what's in the unconscious around how we feel as moms. In my experience, the reason I did my dissertation on it and I wrote the book and I do workshops is because I had worked with so many moms who kept saying, I can't get it right. I can't get it right. What's wrong with me? Nobody else has a struggle. It's the same thing. So how would you speak to the work with mothers and shame, and maybe some of the things you've noticed, parents are struggling with in terms of dealing with the shame, because it's shame itself is shaming, right?
Yeah.
The word itself is shaming, but.
Right. And I think a lot of it is moms don't quite realize that that's what's happening when they get into being triggered or poked, as my friend Janet Philbin likes to say, by some wounds we have that might come from shame.
Yeah.
And then what happens when we react to our kids, because really it's bringing up something inside of us. Mm-hmm. And then you do have to do the work. Why is that bothering me so bad? Why am I not able to show up or connect to my kids? What is it? Mm-hmm. So that's really when you have to excavate and figure it out and go there. And I think it's really important to have a group of people around you that can be vulnerable with you. And I especially feel that way about moms. We need a community. We need people we can let down with. And then I feel, so when the pandemic happened, a couple of things. It was a gift to give us time to just be for a while. We weren't having to get to soccer practice to do, and school looked different, but it also isolated us from what was going on, being able to talk to other moms and having that. And so then I think it probably is bringing up some of those other things for moms. I hear the sound. Is it really bad? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Nobody's like sharing how their sound is going, but that's why I was on my phone. Oh, he's like, I'm trying to text support.
Yes, we're going to figure this out.
Could you please share some details on the problem? Static. Why don't you join? I'll tell him to join us. Static.
Well, and no one's commenting, so I'm wondering if we're on. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for being patient. We're going to figure this out. But I'd love to know about the sound about that. Sorry, I was going to start my phone and see if I could get on and see if anyone was getting on. So anyway,
that's why I was laughing hysterically when we started. I'm going to get this right. It may take me a few years, but I'll get it.
That's okay. We're going to. Yeah. And even that we can be vulnerable. I think that shame is around that too, being able to be vulnerable. Brene Brown for sure, talks about that. But when you can just say, okay, I've been talking to a couple ladies in the neighborhood. I'm like, when we can say, wave the white flag. I need help over here, or I'm struggling with my kids. I'm helping a couple families. I just show up and help their kids online so mom can do some other things that she needs to do. Again, community. How can we help so that we start to relieve that? And I know it's COVID and we still have to be careful and things, but I think we can do both. I think we can be careful and show up for each other and start to break that down, because I think it starts with community and feeling like you can be yourself with someone else.
Right. And so this connection you've made with with the group with Shafali and the parents you've worked with, I know in the book we talk about, in my book, I talk about the different themes that came up in my research and some of the shadow aspects, the deeper unconscious aspects like unrealistic expectations, judgment, um, you know, letting go as our kids get older. You're in the middle of that right now, right?
Oh.
Um, you know, but I can't even remember the themes in my own book. So embracing paradox, because we want to split things and make them all good or all bad.
I'm struggling with my kids. I'm helping families. Sorry. I just show up and help their kids online. So trying to help out and I can't do it.
It gets better and better. It's just getting better and better. This is like hilarious. I'm waiting for the tech guy from Be Live to respond.
Well, I was on there. Yeah, I agree, Patti. All of those things show up.
But what I was wondering is if you have an example. I have a ton of them, but if there's something that you've noticed in your work that really is like, oh, there's the shame. Because of course there's the common themes, obviously, and most of them have some element of shame in them, particularly the expectations and the self-judgment and the judging other mothers, that sort of thing. So I don't know if you have, an example or a story that really stands out for you.
Yeah, and I do want to say too that even though I've done all this work, it certainly still shows up for me right in my face that I still have work to do. When Joey had to come home from Rome from a study abroad, my oldest son. So my sons are 15, 18, and 21. And then we were all home and it was beautiful and lovely. And we spent all this time together and it was this gift, but I was trying not to have attachment to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he moved at the beginning of the summer, moved back to his home in Golden. And I broke down. I cried for like 3 days. Yeah. And so I then was wrestling. What is it? What is it that's bothering me so bad? I'm going to miss him. And then I finally just said, okay, let yourself feel it. Yeah. And a lot of Shafali is like, we have to remember to feel the feelings and let them work through instead of attaching shame around, like, you shouldn't be feeling that way. He's 21 years old. He should get to go. I just went through a grief cycle for myself and I just honored it. Right. Because I always believe in the paradox that it's both and. I was happy for him and I was really sad that he was gone, that I was not, that was probably never again would he, be in our home that way. But that was okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of both themes. It's the paradox and the loving and letting go chapters of the book. And thanks for sharing that, because I do think that giving ourselves permission to feel, because it is grief. I mean, and we're all in so much collective grief right now. Right. And people are wondering, why am I so tired? Why am I not very productive? Why is everything so hard? Because we're grieving. And I know grief all too well from my experiences of loss in my life. Mm-hmm. And it's like walking through molasses. And so, but we live in a world where we want to fix it and make it better and get over it and get out of it instead of being with it. So that's a beautiful story because, of course you're in grief. And at the same time, it's like fly. I mean, it's like, that's our job, like Cahill Gibran poem on Speak to Us of Children. They're not your children. They're the bows that the arrow set forth, or you're the bow of the arrow, whatever. And so there is that feeling for your child, setting sail, and at the same time your own grief. So there's the paradox. That's a great example.
Yeah. And I do think, for parents who have kids around the age of getting ready to go to college, and that came up a lot in the conscious parenting things about, how to prepare your kids, what's important, and I think again, that was the gift somewhat of the shutdown, being at home, that we kind of pulled back a little bit from those things, and it helped us focus on some of the other things, because that's what I know for sure, especially you taught me that, you know, we're on a spiritual journey with our kids, and they are not ours, and they're given to us, and we get to nurture and love them, and yes, and then send them on. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
But we have a lot to go through in the process as well. But I definitely feel that, you know, when we can concentrate on that, stick to the abundance, you know, and when we're, you know, conscious parenting wants you to think about fear. What are you just in fear of all the time that then causes you to react in certain ways? So think about that. And, you know, and every, you know, the workbook I did with you, fear or love, you know, all of our actions, we think about how we're showing up. And I think that's a real good start to looking in, you know, and if we're fearful, then why? Why?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And so much, it's so hard to tease out sometimes because we think that we're doing it out of love, but how much of it is fear of what other parents are going to think of us, or we're going to be a good parent? Am I going to be um, seen as, it's okay. It's life. Let people go. My cat joins us every once in a while. You know, the whole idea of the fear, and this goes back to the chapter on expectations and judgment, you know, the fear of what other people will think. You know, I talk a lot about the movie Bad Moms because I think it tried to speak to that, but then it turned into a whole other, you know, drinking and drugging as a solution, you know, which really is irritating to me because, again, it just speaks to how, I mean, this is about, so much of this is the tip of the iceberg and everything else is unconscious. So if we stay in the tip of the iceberg to try and solve the problem, we're just creating other problems. And so the shadow of the Too Good Mother and the shadow of shame and all the inner pieces are harder because they bring up those feelings. And like you said, the tears came for days, and you know, some people are afraid to cry. Some people are even afraid to cry in my office. It just, you know, I can't, I'm not going to cry in front of you. I'm your therapist, you know. I'm a big fan of tears. Don't worry. But again, these are old beliefs, the shaming beliefs that get set up early on. And you know how I've always talked about the parenting pedagogies of the 18th century and do as I say, not as I do, and all that stuff. And so mothers today, gosh, you know, that's the other thing with my daughter, who's now going to be 40 this year. Cannot believe that. Um, and you know, with her two little ones, you know, and how so much has changed in the tip of the iceberg in terms of electronics and, you know, technology and, you know, lifestyles and things from when I raised kids in the 80s. But what's underneath still is there. It's these feelings of not being good enough and not being worthy, as Brene Brown describes shame, not being worthy of love and belonging. And so that was always my question, you know, with my research and everything in the back of my mind is, what is this that makes it so hard for women to feel good enough? Because Winnicott talked about the good enough mother, you know, and when he was researching that, and the feminists were saying, but good enough is still implied expectation. Whether you're saying perfect or good enough, we still have an expectation. And so we put these expectations on ourselves. So the movies like Bad Mom, and there's other TV shows too, which I really haven't watched, but I know there's quite a few of them out there. When I started doing my workshops, Desperate Housewives was the clip that I would show, and the experience of Lynette taking her son's ADHD medication because she couldn't keep up with getting the costumes done for the school play. And she was threatened when the PTA threatened to, you know, kick her out if she didn't get it done. And so she was kind of had a breakdown because she was so overwhelmed. And so she goes out to the park and her friends come around and see her crying and say, what's the matter? And she said, everybody else can do it but me. And all her friends said, no, you know, we all have that. She goes, well, why didn't anybody tell me?
Yeah, that's when I talk about the community. Like, let's just be real with each other, you know? Yeah.
And I know that's an old show and it's just a funny TV show, but it really, I think you see that in so many, satires too.
Mm-hmm.
So to be real and come together and connect, I mean, that was always why I did the Moms in Real, Moms in Real Life now, and the Mothering Beyond Image, and all
Mm-hmm.
the workshops and,
Yeah.
and groups and everything that I've done through the years, and that's why we're talking about it today. It's like
Right.
let's talk about it.
Right.
It's not just you. That's the other thing that women would say to me. How come everybody else has got this and I can't figure it out? I'm
Right.
like, well, believe me, it was hundreds and hundreds, and now I could say thousands and thousands of women have told me the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that internalizing, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think the shift I want to see is that we start trusting our own intuition and not looking outside. That's part of the work too. There's a movie out now. It's called The Otherhood. It's on Netflix, and many moms in my circles have talked about it. Their sons have gone, and like I don't remember the theme. It's Mother's Day, and they want to be with their sons, and they all show up in New York City or something. But there was an article written by, I think, the person who did the movie about seeing our sons grow and feeling that like it's like a breakup slowly happening when you see them, because they're changing and they're becoming these men. And I have to share another simple story. When we went up a couple of weeks ago to see my middle son, so sent him off to college to CSU in the middle of this COVID situation. And we went to see him because he doesn't have a car a couple weeks ago. And as he's walking towards the car, I saw a different version of my son than I had ever seen before. And yeah, wanted to get choked up, but I'm trying to stay in the moment. I'm trying not to attach anything. And he told us he loved us when he left us that night, which really wasn't his thing. My husband said, "Did he really just say that?" I said, "Yeah." So, we're just in this different. And I woke up the next morning to a Snapchat. "Thanks so much for coming. It was so great to see you guys." And all I could say to him was, "Wow, college looks really good on you."
Aww.
That was my way of just honoring him, and I had to write in my journal all the things I was processing. And he went and got his nose pierced in the time before we had seen him. And I said, "Oh, and that piercing looks really good on you too."
Aww.
And then I shared that with my 21-year-old, and my 21-year-old said, "Mom, you know how amazing that is that you were able to tell him that you didn't judge him about it, that you didn't." And I thought, well, I think I'm doing it right. I just wanted to tell him that I love, I did. That's exactly what I thought. So taking that pause sometimes, and trying to process that, not always easy, but I don't remember where I was going with that, but that we, just being with those feelings,
Yeah. Well, we all want to be seen and heard. And I think what I've experienced is from the old parenting patterns that are still in our DNA, we tend to kind of try and fix things for our kids and talk them out of their feelings. And, it's more about, again, it's like, I got to be a good parent. I got to make sure my kid gets the best education and does the right thing. And, and some parents can be really judgy about, nose rings or, different things. Like I was just talking to a client the other day about political stuff. Her mom doesn't have the same views, but doesn't, just shrugs it off and doesn't really hear what the daughter's views are. And so the conversation was about not being heard, or mom gets on the cell phone. That was the other thing. She says she wants to hear about my life, but when I tell her anything, she gets on her cell phone and she's not really listening. So, to be able to listen and connect and have empathy for our kiddos is the most important thing. But yet it's interesting, isn't it? That's kind of a new thing we're all learning how to do. Honestly, I'm not even good at it myself as long as I've been doing this work. I still catch myself in the fix it mode. Well, you could, what about just listening?
Yeah. And you know what? When we're able to do that, it relieves us. It really does. We are able to just be present. And when we aren't able to fix it, I think we feel more in abundance. We're not going to that fear and lack. We're not seeing that something is wrong. Sometimes we just have to take that moment and say, okay, it's, I had to learn that. That's been my like mantra for a couple of years. Just listen. Ooh, listen.
Yeah.
And pause. Don't think I have to answer right away. And, I'm in the middle of it with my 15-year-old who knows everything, and I can't say too much, but when I just get quiet, we can have the conversation expands, which just amazing. So it's a practice and it's work. It's practice and work.
And you have to slow down. I mean, we live in such a fast pace, hurry up and get it all done. I think how much I talk about family meetings and sitting each week and having conversations with our children. And that takes, as parents, we're like, we can have all this stuff done in 5 minutes, but here we're going to sit for 30 minutes and talk about all of it and then try and implement different strategies, involving the kiddos. Parents have to really kind of step back and go, what's really important here? What's important is, as I'm hearing you say, is the connection and the empathy and the listening. And it requires a slowing down. And we're so busy trying to take care of everything, especially now with parents homeschooling and working at home and trying to juggle all the balls. I mean, it was busy before, but it's a different kind of busy now, but it's still busy. And isn't our busy is really an addiction,
I agree. I think some people, and I think that was difficult for some people, was just being with themselves and not being able to be out. To hear people saying, they never listened to the birds like that before, or basic nature things. That is like hey, you really do need to slow down. And I think it's time then you take some inventory. I just finished The Gifts of Imperfection with Brene Brown, and, making your list of things that are the most important to you, the things that bring you the most joy. And, I think it's a tricky word to say happiness, but because we need to just think of sometimes we just need to be present and what is it today? And especially with our kids, and we teach them those things then, that maybe those other things can be, and I'm not saying school is not important, but we do need to shift maybe our thinking. Maybe you take an inventory of your own family and what that looks like and how you can use this time to, really make a shift. I mean, it could happen. This is a gift of time to do that. Because I think we're seeing, what a year 2020, with this, and now the election year and what that's bringing up for people. Have those conversations with your kid, at least start there for the connection, like we've talked about with boys, get involved, sit next to them, get involved in some other activities so those conversations can happen, and relieve yourself of having to be the helicopter, lawnmower, snowplow parent, whatever we want to say, of mowing it down and making it easier for them, right? They're going to learn when they have to go through some of those things. Just be next to them, be their cheerleader.
Yeah. And it helps them trust themselves when you do say, I know you're going to figure this out. Yeah. I hear you. Instead of, well, mom thinks I ought to do it a certain way, but it feels really hard to me. I think, and actually, here's my theory. I'm sure there's some research out there, or maybe there isn't. I don't know. It's that, this whole idea of talking our kids out of their feelings and trying to get them to feel better is actually a cause of the high suicide and depression and anxiety right now. Because it's like Carl Jung says, what we resist persists and often grows stronger. So whenever a parent says, come on, you can get over this. Come on. Look at what's the matter with you? Just be happy. Boy, does that add to the whole mix that's already there, instead of going, oh gosh, yes, you're really having a hard time.
Yeah. And it's just practice with the language. Yeah. Wow. That sounds like that was really tough. I mean, I've heard it for because some of our own parents probably didn't know that. So we bring this with us, right? What are you crying about? I'll give you something to cry about. What do you know that we weren't even allowed to You know, I didn't, it was a weakness.
Yeah.
And I'm a crier. I cry at happy, sad, you know, oh, mom's crying again, you know. So what I'm learning to just let that happen. And so I want my kids to know, yeah, you're going to be loved through it all. Yeah. And they're our biggest teachers when you're able then to get to that part.
Mm-hmm.
That's so amazing. We're on this spiritual journey together. I mean, I probably learned the most from them and continue to. And I'm not just talking about how to be a better mom, how to be a better human, how to see life in a different way, you know. You know, what our college freshmen are facing right now, I won't even tell you what, you know, my son's been through already with COVID testing and what's happened. And it's a lot.
It's a
It's a
lot.
lot. So I just say, hey, you know, here for you. You know, what can I do for you?
No,
You know?
listen, I hear that you're listening,
Yeah.
which is so much more than we give, you know, credit to. Listening is huge.
Yeah. That's right. We just want to be seen and validated. That's like humans number one. I'm sure you've talked about it many times. And that's easy to do with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is, especially, you know, well, it isn't easy. I mean, it's easy theoretically,
Right.
but because we've been taught to fix
And
things, we have to relearn it.
And that was big to me, that things I wanted to fix were because it was bringing up fears and uncomfortableness within me. You know, I hated when my kids were sick. I would go into a panic. I got to fix it. What medicine do they want? What do they need? Okay, it took me a long time. I didn't know if I just feared like the ultimate worst that was going to happen from a cold. You know, I'm not sure. But so it's relaxing with all of those things, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you brought women together, because I know when I did that talk for you, which was super fun, you know, the women coming together and really appreciating your ability to listen to them is, you know, again, the connection with other parents is so important to know that we're not alone. Again, which is why we're doing this, you know.
Yeah. I feel so strongly about that. And I was reminded that that's why I started Mindful Mama Warriors in the first place. And now we're in these different times, but you know, I want to whether I just choose a book that we read so we can come together. I don't always want to think we have to have like a group therapy session. You know, I think that scares people away. I just want people to come together. You know, I always describe it as we would do play dates at the park for hours and the moms would sit around and talk. The kids were outside having fun. And then, you know, as things shift and get older, we're just not there. And so that was my idea in the beginning was I just still want moms to get together. We still have a lot to process, you know, especially when our kids are preteens and teens and then on. What does it look like? How do we show up? And we may talk about something completely different, but we're developing that connection. I want people to know they can reach out to other people and be honest and vulnerable and ask for help when they need it, you know.
So are you doing any Zoom groups with your moms?
I have. I'm going to start, you know, kind of on the heels of this. I want to, I suggested The Gifts of Imperfection as a book we could talk about, and also Shefali and Rini Jane's Superpowered about anxiety. Although it's written for middle school to high school kids, I think it's very something parents can read and be familiar with. It's, you know, how to befriend your anxiety and use it. Because most of the time it's not going to go away. We can't shove it down, right? We have to address it, and it's tools and just open up conversations for moms and bring. So I'm going to, those that are comfortable getting together in a safe environment, but I'm going to do a Zoom group as well. Start that and see who's interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. And I think that's so important. And I know you've done my workshops and you know that how I always do something sensory in the workshops for each of the themes, because that was my huge aha, which is why I like the shame work so much, because the shame is unconscious and it is sensory. It's set up in the right brain and the feeling and the nervous system. So in my workshops, retreats, we would do poetry, we did ritual, we did dance, music. What else? Clay. We would make clay bowls. Um,
I have
and
mine.
and the paradox box. So we
Oh,
do
yeah.
collage boxes.
Mhm.
And I did that intentionally because I kept thinking that whenever we're in our heads, we're just kind of circling around and around and around, and it's not really landing back to the tip of the iceberg. It was like, this was years ago for me. I was thinking, the more books parents read, the worse they feel. Not that reading a book is bad, and I
I
love the books
agree.
that you're
I
reading.
agree.
But what I'm getting ready to ask you is, because I know that I was stretching comfort zones with people. Was there anything that was uncomfortable for you? Are you comfortable sharing an
Oh, yeah.
uncomfortable
And
experiential?
I've done a couple of your workshops, like weekend retreats, and yeah, I was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
We did dancing, and I was uncomfortable. I love to dance, but in a group setting like that, but I realize how important that is. And you always provided such a safe space for all of us, and that's really, really important. We felt we could show up and do what we needed to do. And yeah, I still have my bowls. I still have my paradox box. I have two. I have a small box and I have one I made out of those Republic of Tea containers because I thought it was so cool. And I've showed it to people. We wrote our paradoxes on it, and that's always stuck with me. I agree. Even Patti, because of you, the last couple of weeks, I just got my crayons and my paper out and drew mandalas on my just paper, watching TV.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, Patti, I'd love to do a mandala workshop with you. That would be fabulous.
Yeah. Well, I want to do that too. So keep
Yeah.
reminding me. We'll plan
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Hopefully,
So
maybe in
yeah,
the beginning of next year.
I was
But yeah,
pushed to discomfort, but it was good. It's always expanding. And I think because you provided that great space for us.
right. Thank you. Thank you. Because that was my intention. And because, my own process, here's my process. When I learn something new and I get an aha, I just assume that everybody else is going to jump in there with me. And I forget sometimes that people aren't ready to jump in. And so it is an interesting process to try and create a safe space and invite people to enter into some of that discomfort, with the goal being they get to embody the material. And so I wanted to ask that because I know I've done quite a few retreats and workshops, and I'm in dialogue about another pretty big thing that's coming up, and I've been really thinking about that, and yeah, I mean, and I say that now, even, like in my course, Go In, Not Out, if you can, especially with the pandemic, when we've had more time alone and at home, especially in quarantine, but things are slowing down and we don't have as many opportunities out there, especially with winter. It's going to be harder because there won't be as many outdoor things and there'll be more at home time. And so to allow yourself to not worry, it's that perfection, right? The gifts of imperfection. Perfect is the opposite of finished, is my thought. And
The camera backwards is killing me.
exactly. It's great for me with my dyslexia too. It's like, what? Anyway, the sound is better though, I think.
Oh, good.
I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't hear it coming.
Anyway,
we'll have to go back and read the comments. If you were making comments, please know we'll both go back and check them out.
and I bet you it's fine on other people's end. But anyway, what I was saying was to be able to create a space where people can do that. And also now that people are home, getting out the paints, like you said, getting out the crayons, and doing mandalas, and just because it calms the nervous system and it activates the right brain. And that's where the healing happens, because the shame does not live in the left brain. The stories we make up about the shame live in our thoughts. The feeling of the shame lives in our body. And so anything we can do, and that's the thing, creative arts, music, dance, all of those things, being in nature, can heal, can actually create new neural pathways that got pruned off early on, that allow us to feel good enough. But it's an ongoing practice. Like you said, you're still working with what comes up for you, and so am I. I mean, I just got a new client this week who's a neuropsychologist, and I was like terrified sending him the intake forms. I'm like, what? You want to work with me? It's like, there it is. But I'm making it conscious. And I felt very normal saying just what I just said, but it's the truth. It doesn't, we have this promised land syndrome, like we're going to end up and we're going to get there and we'll be done. But that's our left brain. That's our thought. That's our, can I read a book and make it better? And what I found out was the more books you read, the worse it gets, because it lives in the sensory memory, not the logical memory. So anyway,
I shared this huge stack of books today that have been part of my journey. But I agree with you about if it's trusting your intuition. If it's the right time, listen to that. Trust that it's the right book. Don't say, I should read this book because everybody's telling me I should. No, wait till you know it's the right time, and then it will unfold for you how it's supposed to, you know. And I appreciate your vulnerability there. Like, we all can say we're just real people. We're humans, and we're in the being, you know, of just living this life and doing this the best we can every day. Yeah, I love that Brene Brown says, you know, make your playlist of music that's like your favorite. And every day put on something that you just want to dance to and sing at the top of your lungs. Even that is so, you know, therapeutic.
Right.
You know, I do agree with meditation. I did a meditation before we started today, but it's not always for everybody. Like, again, everybody says you got to meditate. Well, wait till it's the right time for you. It might be 5 minutes looking at the clouds. I tell people, don't think you have to go into the Om business of it. Patti has great guided meditations that I've done, and they're beautiful. So if you need that, whatever it takes to kind of help you get on your track, get balanced.
Yeah. And so books are great. And I love all the books that you're reading. I like them a lot. It's the idea of, in order to really land that material, we have to do, like you were saying, the mindfulness meditations and the play, you know, that Brene Brown talks about the research around play.
Right.
Because that's why I always show my little nuff.
Yeah.
You know, my little nuff, because that's playful. It actually, when we're in play, we are exhaling and relaxing, and the nervous system feels safe. And that's what we're trying to get to, is a feeling of emotional safety. And that's what, when we're in shame, we're in fear that I'm not good enough and I'm not lovable.
Right.
So I love her research around shame, the idea of playing music and all that stuff. So it's like, it's a combo. You can't just, but the old books back in the day, you know, I'm old. So in the 80s, they were all the research telling women how to be good enough mothers, you know, and there wasn't a lot of what we know now about the neurobiology and the sensory aspects. So it's really super cool that we can combine it. But what I appreciate that you shared is, for me, it's learning I'm continually learning how to create a safe space for people to be able to feel into that. And the evaluations I usually get on my retreats are really good. And like, some of them start like, oh no, I showed up and I saw the Kleenex box in the middle of the room and I don't know what I signed up for, to wow, that was phenomenal, you know? And so I do work really hard on creating that safe space and giving people those sensory experiences. And now that people are home, you know, that would be my invitation, is to give yourself permission to play and be in creativity. So we're getting there. I think the sound got better. Yay.
Be hung there.
What else about mothering and shame comes to mind, Stacie, that we can finish up with? And then I want you to tell us about how people can find you and, you know, what you have to offer.
I just feel there shouldn't be any, and I know there is, but you really do have to look inside and just don't be afraid to ask for help around it. You know, I think part of the work that started me is, you know, I just saw ladies my age starting to drink a lot. Like, you're talking about bad bad moms and whatnot. And I'm for, relaxing, but I was seeing more and more people using it as a complete escape.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what are you escaping for? It can be so wonderful. But there is life stresses, and there's things that do bring up things for us. And it's okay. And it's okay to, need a hot bath and a glass of wine and to relax, because that might get you to a place where you can, address things a little bit more. But reach out and find help. I think I want moms to show up for each other, and it doesn't have to be through Mindful Mama Warriors. Text a friend today that you may know be having a hard time. I do that a lot. I want people to know I'm here for them. I'm thinking about them, validating them. I mean, do that for someone else, whether it's your mom, if she's still here, or your kids, or a friend. I think sometimes those little nuggets can go a long way. Start the conversations, be of service. I've always done a lot of volunteer work and feel that that's important. It's looking different right now, but I think you can show up in other ways. And that validates yourself too, when you can just kind of let go and be there for someone else. So, and I just want, you don't need to hide. If you do have something that has happened that you, the shame and guilt thing, it's okay. It's okay. Just you can ask for help, or like these books that I've shared. Patty's Moms in Real Life class was amazing, that you could do at your own pace. Find something that speaks to you to kind of help you go there, because I think that authenticity architecture work of your own life is so important. I remember just that with you, Patti, our first work, and thinking, oh, yes, then I was like recognizing things in me that I'm like, yeah, that's who I am. And I wasn't embarrassed or saddened by it. Like, I could show up, and I started then being less judgmental of other moms, appreciating them for who they were and how they showed up with their kids. And that is a big shift. You realize that you don't have to knock anybody else down to make yourself feel better. And then you just show up so different in your life with everyone, your kids, yourself, your friends, your spouse. I've had dark nights of the soul, believe me, where I'm like, 3 days of crying when your son moves out. I mean, but it's okay. I said, okay, I'm going to go through this grieving process, and then I'm going to be okay, Yeah.
But I think that judgment is so important. When we judge other people, it's our own self-judgment. And when we can let go of our own self-judgment, we don't have as much judgment around other people. And so thank you for sharing that. I mean, when I hear that, it makes my heart happy, because that's why I do it. And it's good to know that was an experience you had. And I always say the definition of mindfulness, Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition, is moment to moment non-judgmental awareness. And so it doesn't.
I had goosebumps when I remember sitting in that coffee shop in wherever we were, Lafayette, and I remember hearing that phrase for the first time. What was it?
Mojo Mamas. It's not there anymore.
Yes. And I was like, oh, that non-judgmental moment to moment awareness, or whatever that is, it's huge.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a simple little phrase. If that's our only intention, we've done tremendous amounts of self-growth. Because we tend to be judgy. And why are we judgy? Because we're afraid of our own shame. And so I'm going to blame and shame and judge everybody else. And I don't have to come back and unconditionally love all the parts of myself that I don't like so much. I mean, we all have things we don't like. So
right. No shadow.
Yeah. We can't judge them. I mean, none of us are perfect. We're all learning. If you get a minute, Stacie, put your website. It should have gone out in all the things. Hopefully,
it did show up on some of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And some of the links, again, the tech stuff, I'm still working on getting links to work.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just put it in the comment section at some point, even after the podcast, you can do that, and then people can check out what you're doing, because it's great to connect, and it sounds like you're offering some opportunities for people to do that.
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Patti. You don't even know. Yep. It's like full circle moment for me.
Yeah. Well, and you've been such a cheerleader for me, and I need that sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, what the heck am I doing?
No, because you show up and your stuff is amazing, and you introduced me to so many things. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Grateful.
Well, what's our last message to the mamas out there? What would you say?
Find joy in the small little moments, and just be in the present as much as you can.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacie.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I won't be here next week because I'm doing a 2-day training on shame for therapists for my new book, Shame Informed Therapy. Let me just give a plug out for that before we go.
Yeah, I did read it. I downloaded it and I read it all. It's good.
So I can't anyway, I can't show it and me at the same time, but there it is, Shame Informed Therapy. And it's for clinicians, but the workshops people can use on their own. I'm eventually want to get a workbook that people can use if they're not a clinician, but hopefully some of the worksheets were helpful. Some of them are on my website, some of them are in my courses.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a 2-day training for therapists and clinicians next Thursday and Friday, so I won't be here. But the week after that, I've got Allison Harden, who's a recovery coach in Denver, and she does incredible work with helping people stay sober. And just backing up, I really appreciate what you said earlier, Stacie, about the drinking. I'm actually doing Sober October because I found the red wine was going down a little too easy during this quarantine. So I decided to really just take 30 days of let's not crack open that bottle anymore. And because I think it becomes an easy go-to and an easy distraction. And so I think especially with moms, because well, not especially with moms, but I've seen it a lot with moms, and like you were saying. And so anything that we do to cover up and to numb out and not feel really delays the process of our inner healing. And like you were saying, it's okay. I actually had an appointment with my primary care doc this week, and I told him I was going to do Sober October. And he actually told me it was Sober October. I said, I need to take a break. He said, well, it's Sober October. And he said, but it's okay. If you want to have a glass of wine at night. I said, I know, but it turns into 2 or 3. So I'm going to not have any at all for a while. So I think it is okay if you can have a glass or 2 occasionally.
Especially when you're just with your friends, and drinking alone, that's sometimes a problem. Yeah.
Right, I know. Nobody can share it with. There's more
right.
But
even
anyway,
if you want to do a Zoom call, there are a lot of happy hours were happening during the height of the pandemic. So yeah.
And it's such a thing. It's like a lot of people, even the college kids that I talk to, it's such a culture. And that's the scary part for me, is because like I'm going to do a couple things this weekend with friends where I would typically drink. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to drink. And I mean, that's okay. But what am I going to have instead? It's just more of a, well, this is what we do. And so I think it's really
unconscious. Becomes more of an unconscious habit. Yeah,
really important to pay attention to our addictions. Like we're talking about busy being an addiction. So Allison Harden does great work as an addiction and recovery coach, and she trains recovery coaches, and she's fantastic. And so I think shame and addiction, and as we talked about today, parenting, often kind of circle around. So join me in 2 weeks. I think that's going to be October 23rd. And hopefully I'll have the tech stuff. Well, I have no promises that I'll have the tech stuff figured out. But anyway, thanks again, Stacie. And we'll see you. See everybody in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stop streaming.